Hi there, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to make a small DIY tabletop without needing any special tools to make it and only costing a plank of wood and a weekend to make it. So I'm Darren and I'm your host and you're watching Darren DIY. And now, without any further ado, grab a drink or something to eat and I hope you will enjoy. So I had this small and rather rusty table that I had laying around which I only used occasionally to carry some stuff on. And since it had an old and beaten up top, I thought that I should make one a bit more solid. So I went to my local lumber shop and bought myself the straightest plank that I could find. Although it was the straightest, it wasn't perfect as it had a chip at one end. If you have a plank that is not straight, leave a couple of weights on it for a few days. So now let's begin. First, I went ahead and measured the table. In my case, 20 inches by 2 feet. Remember to leave a bit of extra at the ends. You can always cut the extra later. Now, since the width of the table is 20 inches and the width of the plank is 6 inches, we are going to need to cut 4 pieces of wood 2 feet long and cut one of the pieces into half so that we have a 3-inch wide plank, as I want the wood sticking a little out from the table itself. So that is what I went ahead and did. First mark the planks, then cut them using a circular saw. Note that you could also use a handsaw instead. After this, I cut one of them in half. I was going to cut it using a handsaw, as I thought that it would be more precise, but it turned out that using the circular saw was better. So as you can see, this is how it is going to roughly look on the table. So after this, I went ahead and roughly sanded the sides where the pieces of wood are going to be glued together. Now I had a bit of a problem, since I didn't have those large clamps to hold the wood together while the glue dries. I thought of making them myself, but that would consume a lot of time. So I came up with an easy solution. First, I laid 2 sheets of wax paper on the floor so that the glue doesn't stick to the concrete. Then, I glued the wood using some ordinary wood glue. And then, press the wood pieces between the wall, or a piece of wood in my case, and then another piece of wood with a lot of weights pressing on one side. You could use rocks or jugs filled with water, but I had these refrigerator compressors laying around and they act as really good weights. Also make sure to put weights on the top of the wood, so that it does not bend and become arched under the pressure. Now, after around 8 hours, the glue should have hardened. Although not cured, it is still solid. So if your plank had wood nuts in it, we are going to need to glue them in place as they tend to fall out. So now while the glue is drying, I'm going to start working on the table itself. As you can see, it's very rusty, so I'm going to give it a quick sanding and then paint an anti-rust paint as the undercoat. So as you can see, overnight both the table and the tabletop are ready. And the first thing that I'm going to do is to plane the joints where the wood meets, using a planer. This isn't necessary, but it will make sanding much smoother. So now after that, we're going to need to sand the wood so that it is level. My plank was very rough and even had small grooves in it, so it took me around an hour to sand the whole thing to a rough finish. So after that 40 grit sanding, it should look something like this. And now I'm going to continue on the table itself, by giving it the second and third coat of paint, and in my case white. So after that was done, I went ahead and marked a 90-degree angle line with the corner and cut the excess wood on the sides. After this, I sanded where I cut earlier. Now, I also wanted to have a beveled edge, and although I didn't have a router, I still achieved it by using the belt sander, some patience, and by doing a swinging motion like this. After loads of sanding, it was ready and looked just like as if I did it using a router. Note that you could also do this by using a planer. After that the beveled end and the rough sanding was done, the tabletop was ready for the polishing. So first, using the belt sander, I sanded until 150 grit. I didn't record it as I don't think anyone would like to watch 1 hour and 30 minutes of sanding. Now, after sanding with the belt sander, I went ahead and hand sanded the whole thing to 800 grit. And after all of that sanding and polishing, it's time for my favorite part: staining and applying the varnish. If you want, you could leave the natural color of the wood, but I decided to stain it as it would look much better. The stain that I used was an antique pine stain, and it looks really nice. After 3 coats of the stain, it was time to apply the varnish. And I chose spray-on varnish as it would look a lot nicer than brush-on varnish. Although if you have a large tabletop, I think it would be cheaper to buy brush-on varnish. Also, 2 or 3 coats of varnish are enough, and it depends on where the table will be. So as you can see, after around an hour, the varnish dried, and as you can see now, you can really see the true pattern of the grain, since more or less stain is absorbed in different parts of the wood, and so a contrast is created. Now, all that is left to do is to screw the tabletop to the table itself. The screws were a bit longer than the thickness of the wood and the metal, so I used some washers so that the screw won't go through the tabletop. Also, if you left a little bit of extra wood at the ends, make sure that the tabletop is in the exact middle or it won't look good. So after a lot of work, our DIY tabletop is complete. And as you can see in some daylight, the camera picks up the true colors and nature of the wood more vividly. So unfortunately, that's the end of this video, and I really hope that you enjoyed it, or at least appreciate the time needed to record and edit this video. Also, I really wish I could upload more frequently, but I don't have the time to do so. So if you did like this video, make sure to drop a like down below, it really helps me, and subscribe so that you won't miss any new videos like this one. So as always guys, until next time, stay safe and have fun. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.